Miguel Herrera is such an idiot. Next month, we're getting rid of him. Mark my words. He has no idea it's coming. The voice on the video left no doubt. Miguel Herrera, my boss of 20 years. I stared at my phone, my fingers numb against the cold edges of the screen. The video, barely 30 seconds long, showed Miguel at the company's annual staff party, holding a whiskey glass, surrounded by a laughing crowd. My colleagues, the people I'd worked with for decades. Some chuckled, others shifted uncomfortably, but no one stood up for me. Kian Patel, a junior analyst I had mentored since his first day, sent me the video late last night. The message attached was brief. "I thought you should see this before Monday." A sharp, acidic feeling burned in my throat. After 2 decades of unwavering dedication to Herrera and Phillips Consulting, I was nothing but a punchline to them. I watched the video again, listening to Miguel's words echo over and over. "She's so damn naive. Thinks she's irreplaceable. Watch this. Next month we'll have a fresh face in her seat and she won't even see it coming." I had given everything to this company. Long nights, missed birthdays, weekends spent polishing reports to make Miguel look good in front of clients. I had covered for his mistakes, smoothed over his blunders, even defended him when others whispered about his incompetence. And this was the thanks I got, a betrayal so deep it took my breath away. I couldn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing between anger, humiliation, and something colder, determination. At exactly 7:55 a.m., I walked into the office as usual. My heartbeat was steady, my expression composed. If Miguel thought I was naive, if he truly believed I'd walk blindly into my own firing, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The office hummed with its typical Monday morning buzz, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. Miguel's office door was wide open. He was leaned back in his chair, laughing with Omar Ruiz, the CFO. I paused in the doorway, forced a normal expression, and greeted him with a polite smile. "Morning, Miguel," I said. His eyes flicked toward me, hesitation and guilt flickering in them, no arrogance. He smiled like nothing had happened. "Ava Jansen, how was your weekend?" "Great," I nodded, feeling refreshed for another productive month. He smirked. "That's what I like to hear." "I bet it is." I turned and walked to my desk, and so, the game began. For the next 4 weeks, I played the role of the perfect employee. I smiled in meetings, offered solutions, took on extra work, stayed late, just as I always had. But beneath the surface, I was gathering everything I needed. Emails, contracts, financial reports, things most people wouldn't give a second thought to. I thought twice about everything. More importantly, I made sure someone else did too. I reached out to old clients, the ones loyal to me, not Miguel. I casually hinted at exploring new opportunities, and the interest was immediate. I contacted a corporate attorney, laying the foundation for something that would hit Miguel where it hurt the most, his wallet and his reputation. Most importantly, I reached out to a competitor, a firm that had been eyeing Herrera and Phillips for months, looking for a way to poach their best talent. I wasn't just leaving, I was taking everything he had taken for granted with me. On the morning of my final day, I arrived early. Miguel hadn't told me yet. He probably thought he'd catch me off guard, call me into his office with HR, give me some empty speech about restructuring and budget cuts. He had no idea I already knew. He had no idea I was 3 steps ahead. By the end of the day, he would realize who the real fool was. I watched Miguel from across the office, a polite smile masking the storm brewing inside me. He was so sure of himself, laughing with Omar Ruiz like nothing was about to change. He thought he had won. But today, I wasn't just going to get fired. I was going to make sure this was the day everything started to unravel for him. The day passed normally. Emails, meetings, reports, as if everything were fine. But I could feel it. The subtle shift in the air. People were watching me, whispering behind closed doors, stealing glances when they thought I wasn't paying attention. I kept my posture relaxed, moving through the day as if I had no idea what was coming. If they expected tears, desperation, or pleading, They were going to be sorely disappointed. At precisely 3 p.m., I saw Leila Mendez from HR walk into Miguel's office, her face neutral, her gaze carefully avoiding mine. A few minutes later, my phone lit up. "Miguel Herrera, please come to my office at 3:30. There it was. I exhaled slowly, then stood, smoothing down my blouse. It was showtime. I knocked on the door and stepped inside with a polite smile. Leila sat across from Miguel, her company-issued folder neatly in front of her. Standard HR protocol. I had seen this play out before, just never from the other side. Miguel put on his best fake sympathetic expression. "Ava Johnson, please, have a seat. We truly appreciate your dedication to the company over the last 20 years, Miguel began, his voice calm and rehearsed, like he was reading from a script. But as you're aware, the industry is evolving, and we've had to make some tough decisions regarding staffing. I nodded, as though this was new information. We've decided to restructure your role, and unfortunately, your position is being phased out, he continued. To ensure a smooth transition, we're offering you a generous severance package. Leila slid the folder across the table, but I made no move to touch it. I noticed a brief flicker of relief cross Miguel's face. He had expected some kind of reaction, anger, confusion, maybe even pleading. Instead, I simply smiled. I understand, I said, my voice smooth and steady. A moment of hesitation crossed Miguel's face. This was too easy, too clean for him. He cleared his throat. We'll need your company laptop and access badge by the end of the day. And of course, we ask that you sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding company operations. Of course, I replied, calm as ever. They wanted to make sure I left without causing a stir. I stayed quiet, watching, waiting. Then Miguel leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping in what he probably thought was a comforting tone. I know this is tough, he said, attempting sympathy, but you're a talented person, Ava. I'm sure you'll land on your feet. I know I will, I replied, tilting my head ever so slightly. Just to clarify, this decision is final, correct? Miguel blinked, caught off guard. Yes, of course. Perfect, I said. I'll start wrapping up my work. Miguel nodded, eager to be done with it all. We appreciate your professionalism. I stood up, picked up the folder, and flashed them both a polite smile. As I left the office, I felt the weight of 20 years lift from my shoulders. Now I was free to burn everything down. The rest of the afternoon unfolded exactly as they expected, packing up my things, exchanging pleasant goodbyes with coworkers, just another employee leaving. But behind the scenes, I was quietly pulling the final strings of my plan. Before logging off for the last time, I archived every email, every project file, every client contract I had access to, perfectly legal since I was still an employee until the end of the day. Then I sent one final email, not to Miguel, but to the client who accounted for 40% of the company's revenue. It was short, professional. Hi, Ahmed Al-Farsi. I wanted to thank you for your partnership over the years. Given my upcoming departure from Herrera and Phillips, I wanted to let you know I'll be available for consulting in the near future. I'd love to discuss how I can continue assisting your company. Let me know if you'd like to set up a call. I hit send. That single email was more dangerous than any lawsuit. At exactly 5 p.m., I walked out of the building for the last time. I didn't look back. Miguel had no idea what was coming. The morning after my departure, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I knew who it was, but I let it ring out. Leaning back against my pillows, a slow smile curled on my lips. Miguel was about to realize just how colossal a mistake he'd made. I'd expected at least a few days before the fallout started, but Miguel's arrogance had hastened the process. By 10 a.m., I had 3 missed calls from Herrera and Phillips. By noon, I received a text from Kian Patel. Ava Johnson, whatever you did, the office is in full meltdown mode. Ahmed Al-Farsi just pulled out of his contract. Miguel is losing it. I laughed aloud. Ahmed Al-Farsi, the CEO of our biggest client, had clearly seen the writing on the wall. No Ava Johnson, no stability, no reason to stay. Miguel had taken me for granted for 20 years. He thought I was replaceable, but the reality was, I had been the glue holding everything together. and now that glue was gone. At 2:30 p.m., another call came in. This time, I answered. "Hello?" I said, my tone still composed. A sharp exhale followed before Miguel's voice came through, tight and controlled. "Ava Johnson, I just heard about Ahmed. He mentioned you reached out." "I did," I replied flatly. Silence. Miguel wasn't used to me being so calm. He forced a chuckle. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. Ahmed seemed to think you were leaving to work elsewhere. He got spooked. I'd love to clear this up." "Ah, so he wanted me to fix the mess he'd created." I leaned back in my chair, twirling my pen with casual ease. "Miguel," I said smoothly, "you told everyone I was a worthless idiot who wouldn't see it coming. Why would you need me now?" Silence again. I could practically hear him grinding his teeth. "Ava Jansen," he said, this time slower, more cautious. "You know that was just office banter." I cut him off, my voice light, almost mocking. "I don't hold grudges, Miguel. I just make smart decisions. Ahmed made one too." I heard him breathe in sharply. "Are you working for someone else?" Desperation was creeping into his voice now as he tried to figure out my next move. I smiled, my voice smooth. "I don't see how that's relevant to you." A long silence hung between us before he spoke again, his voice laced with a barely contained threat. "This isn't a smart play, Ava Jansen. We have a lot of mutual contacts in this industry." Ah, the classic intimidation tactic. He still thought he had the upper hand. That was his biggest mistake. After hanging up, I wasted no time. I pulled out my notes and checked my list. Miguel was just the beginning. Over the last few weeks, I'd been quietly negotiating with his biggest competitors, the firms he secretly feared, the ones he dismissed in meetings, but constantly tried to undercut. One of them, in particular, had shown a strong interest in what I had to offer. At 4 p.m., I walked into a sleek office downtown, greeted by a receptionist who already knew my name. 5 minutes later, I sat across from Luca Moretti, CEO of Sterling & Company. "I'll be up front with you," Luca began, leaning forward, his eyes sharp with focus. "The moment I caught wind that you were leaving Herrera and Phillips, I had my team keeping tabs. And after today's news, I think it's safe to say Miguel's ship is sinking." I flashed him a knowing smile. "And you want to capitalize on that?" Luca smirked. "I want to make sure we both walk away winners." I already knew the offer was coming, but I wasn't just after a job. I wanted leverage. I slid the file I had prepared across the table. "These," I said, "are projections based on my inside knowledge of Herrera and Phillips' clients, their upcoming renewals, and the weaknesses in their contracts. If you want to take them down, this is the starting point." Luca flipped through the pages, satisfaction darkening his expression as he took in the information. He looked up at me. "I assume you're not just giving this away for free." I smiled. "No, I'm not." His grin widened. "Let's talk terms." By the time I left the office, the deal was done. I wasn't just joining Sterling. I was bringing Herrera and Phillips' clients with me. By next week, Miguel wouldn't just be losing contracts. He'd be losing clients, and the best part? He still had no clue. Miguel was about to learn what true panic felt like. By Monday morning, the storm hit. As soon as Herrera and Phillips opened their doors, their inboxes were flooded with termination notices. 3 major clients I had personally managed for years, had made the decision to jump ship. Sterling & Company had acted swiftly, far faster than Miguel had anticipated, and I was watching it all unfold from the other side of the battlefield. At 8:15 a.m., Kian Patel's text came through. "Holy shit, Ava Jansen. Miguel just stormed into the main office. Looks like he hasn't slept in days. I swear he's about to explode." I smirked. Good. Miguel had been so smug, so certain that I was just another replaceable employee. But today, he was discovering that losing me wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was a full-blown disaster. By 9 a.m., the cracks were turning into full-blown fractures. Omar Ruiz, the CFO, had locked himself in his office, frantically crunching numbers to assess the damage. Legal was scrambling to review contracts, looking for any loophole they could exploit to keep the fleeing clients tied down. Miguel was making desperate calls to every executive contact he could reach, trying to persuade them to stay. But it was too late. The whispers spread quickly. Clients were starting to realize just how unstable Herrera and Phillips had become. And the worst part? Miguel had no idea who was truly responsible. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked it up. Ava Johnson. Miguel's voice crackled through the line, strained and barely controlled. I leaned back in my chair, my tone casual. Miguel, to what do I owe the pleasure? He exhaled sharply. I don't know what the hell you've been telling people, but we've got a serious problem. I raised an eyebrow, even though he couldn't see me. What kind of problem? You know damn well what kind, he snapped. Ahmed Al-Farsi's gone, and now 3 other major accounts are pulling out. That's millions in revenue vanishing overnight. I need you to be straight with me, did you? He trailed off, unwilling to say the words. Did I orchestrate this? I let the silence hang, just long enough to let him sweat. Finally, I spoke, my voice cool and deliberate. I don't work for Herrera and Phillips anymore, Miguel. What happens to your company is no longer my concern. A beat of silence followed. Then he asked, his voice turning sharp. You're with Sterling, aren't you? I smiled. I don't see how that's relevant to you. Miguel muttered a curse under his breath. You're making a mistake, Ava Johnson. This industry is small. You don't want to burn bridges. I chuckled softly. Miguel, you burned that bridge the moment you called me a worthless dumbass at that party in front of the whole company. The line went silent. For the first time, I heard it. Fear. He knew this wasn't some random stroke of bad luck. This was me. I could almost hear him sitting there, watching everything slip through his fingers. Realization hit him hard. He had severely underestimated me. And this was just the beginning. At 3 p.m., another update came through from Kian Patel. Emergency board meeting just called. The investors are freaking out. There's talk of replacing Miguel. I felt a wave of satisfaction flood over me. This was part of the plan, all along. Miguel had always hidden behind my work, my dedication, to cover up his failures. But now, the ugly truth was out in the open. And in the corporate world, nothing kills a CEO faster than uncertainty and lost revenue. The next morning, I made my final move. I walked into Herrera and Phillips, not as an employee, but as a warning. The office was unnervingly quiet. The usual energy was gone, replaced by a thick, suffocating tension. People stared at me as I walked through the hall, whispering behind their screens. They knew. They all knew. When I reached Miguel's office, I knocked. "Come in," came the gruff response. I stepped inside. Miguel was sitting at his desk, tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes, his usual arrogance nowhere to be found. I closed the door behind me and took a seat across from him, mirroring the position we'd shared just a week ago when he fired me. "How's it going, Miguel?" I asked, my tone light and casual. His jaw clenched, and he snapped, "Cut the crap, Ava Johnson. What do you want?" I tilted my head. "Me? I just wanted to see how you were doing." He let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Oh, you know how I'm doing," I smiled. "I did," I replied smoothly. He inhaled sharply, gathering his thoughts. "Look, if there's any way to fix this, to make things right, what would it take?" Ah, there it was. The desperation, the shift in power. I leaned forward just a bit, my voice soft but resolute. "There's no fixing this, Miguel." His features hardened, his confidence wavering. "You think you've won?" I stood up, adjusting my blazer as I did. "I don't think I've won. I know I have." Before I stepped out of his office for the final time, I turned back and threw him the last words he never saw coming. "Enjoy unemployment, Miguel." And with that, I walked away, leaving him in the wreckage of the empire he'd built on arrogance and my years of hard work. Miguel had believed he could put a lid on the damage, thinking a few phone calls, a little damage control, maybe some empty promises could plug the hole. But by the end of the week, Herrera and Phillips wasn't just leaking. It was bleeding out. And now, the world was watching it happen in real time. On Friday morning, the headlines broke: major client exodus at Herrera and Phillips, CEO under fire Sterling, and company acquires key clients in strategic move. Is this the end for C&P? Executive shakeup. Imminent investors. Lose confidence in Miguel Herrera's leadership. Every major business journal, corporate blog, and financial analyst picked it up. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my brand new office at Sterling and Company, sipping my coffee, watching the empire that Miguel had built on his own arrogance and my diligence crumble into dust. At 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Kian Patel. "You won't believe this. Emergency investor meeting. Rumor is they're pushing Miguel out." I leaned back in my chair, smiling to myself. Right on cue. At 1 p.m., the board held an emergency meeting. Every senior executive, every major investor, and of course, Miguel. For the past week, he'd been spiraling, trying and failing to douse the flames. But now, the board had heard enough. "Gentlemen," Miguel began, flashing his typical smirk, "I know things look bad right now, but I have a plan." Before he could continue, one of the senior board members interrupted him. "We've already spoken with the top investors. This is not up for debate." Miguel's smirk faltered. "We're losing clients. Our stock has plummeted 23%, and Sterling and Company has outmaneuvered us at every turn," the board member said bluntly. "Do you even grasp the damage this has caused?" Miguel's face darkened. "You think this is my fault?" A sharp, almost mocking laugh came from the other side of the table. "You fired the person who was holding this company together," another board member said pointedly. "And now she's using everything she built here to bring you down." Miguel's hands curled into fists. He knew who was behind this. And worst of all, there wasn't a single thing he could do to stop it. At 3 p.m., an internal email circulated. "Effective immediately, Miguel Herrera has resigned as CEO of Herrera and Phillips Consulting. An interim leadership team will be announced shortly." I read it twice to savor the moment. Miguel Herrera. Ousted, publicly humiliated, everything he built torn to shreds. But it still wasn't enough. At 5:30 p.m., I received an email from Miguel himself. Subject: Let's talk. Oh, this was going to be good. I opened it. "Ava Jansen, I think we both know things have gotten out of hand. I won't pretend we've always seen eye to eye, but we worked together for a long time. I know you're behind all this, and I think it's time we sit down and resolve things. Let's meet. Predictable, desperate, pathetic." I clicked reply and typed, "Miguel, there's nothing to discuss. I already told you this isn't fixable. Enjoy your weekend." Then I hit send, closing the final chapter of Miguel Herrera's career. But my story? It was only just beginning. The storm had passed. Miguel Herrera was finished. His empire had collapsed, his reputation in tatters. Herrera and Phillips, floundering in the wake of his mistakes. But as for me, I was just getting started. On Monday morning, I walked into Sterling and Company's headquarters as their newest senior partner, a position I earned, not because I played office politics, but because I was the best at what I did. Luca Moretti, the CEO, greeted me in the executive lounge with a firm handshake. "Welcome aboard, Ava Jansen," he said. "From what I hear, you've already made quite an impression." I smiled. "I like to be efficient." He chuckled. "Well, you're exactly what we need. The clients you brought in, they trust you, and more importantly, they're ready to grow." I nodded, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement, potential, control. This wasn't just a job. This was a new beginning. I should have known Miguel wouldn't vanish quietly. Later that afternoon, my assistant knocked on my door. "Ava Jansen," she said hesitantly, "you have a visitor." I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She looked uneasy. "Miguel Herrera." I stared at her for a moment, then exhaled slowly. "Send him in." A few moments later, Miguel walked in, or rather, the shell of him. His expensive suit, his arrogant smirk, his once unshakable presence, gone. His eyes were tired, his face haggard. For the first time in his life, he looked small. I leaned back in my chair, studying him carefully. He didn't sit. He didn't speak right away. Finally, he let out a humorless chuckle. "You really did it, huh?" he muttered. I tilted my head. "Did what?" His jaw tightened. "You destroyed me." I didn't correct him. He wasn't wrong. Instead, I simply smiled, leaning in a little, savoring the moment. I simply said, "You destroyed yourself, Miguel." He let out a sharp exhale. I underestimated you. I gave a nod. Yes, you did. The silence between us stretched on, heavy and thick. Then, in a moment I never expected, he spoke. I need a job. I almost laughed. Almost. But instead, I just stared at him. Miguel Herrera, the man who had belittled me, humiliated me, called me a worthless dumbass in front of an entire room, was now standing before me, begging. It was almost poetic, perfect in its own way. I could have crushed him right then and there. I could have torn him down, made him feel every ounce of pain I'd suffered, humiliated him in return. But I didn't. Instead, I walked toward him, meeting his defeated gaze without flinching. No, Miguel, I said softly, my voice steady. You don't need a job. What you need is a lesson. His eyes darkened, but he remained silent. I offered him a cold smile, one full of knowing. Good luck, Miguel, I said, turning and walking back to my desk. And just like that, I dismissed him. For good. Later that evening, I sat in my new office, looking out at the city skyline. Everything felt different now. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't just another cog in someone else's machine. I was the one who held the power. My mind drifted back to that night, the video, the laughter, the sting of betrayal. Now, I wasn't just Ava Jansen, the disposable employee. I was Ava Jansen, the woman who carved her own future. The woman who had learned that loyalty is only valuable when it's given to those who truly deserve it. The woman who knew exactly what she was worth. I smiled to myself, lifting my glass of wine, and softly whispered the words Miguel Herrera would never have expected to hear. I win.